There comes a moment in every person's life when you realize that the path you're walking doesn't have to be crowded to be meaningful. In fact, some of the most significant transformations happen when you're willing to walk alone. Not because you're antisocial or because you hate people, but because you've come to understand something profound about your own existence. You've realized that your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you'll ever have, and sometimes that relationship requires solitude to flourish. Now, I want you to think about something. How many times have you made a decision based on what other people would think? How many times have you chosen a path because it was the popular path, the expected path, the path that everyone else seemed to be walking? And how many times did that path lead you away from who you really are? The truth is, most people spend their entire lives living according to someone else's blueprint. They follow the crowd because following the crowd feels safe. It feels comfortable. It feels like belonging. But here's what I've learned, and here's what I want you to understand right now. Belonging to everyone else means you're not belonging to yourself. The man who walks alone isn't lonely. He's awake. He's conscious. He's made a choice that most people are too afraid to make. He's decided that his inner compass matters more than the opinions of others. He's decided that his own truth is more valuable than the approval of the masses. And yes, this creates a certain kind of solitude, but this solitude isn't empty, it's full, it's rich. It's overflowing with possibility, because when you're alone with yourself, when you're not distracted by the constant noise of other people's expectations and judgments, you can finally hear your own voice. You see, we live in a world that's terrified of being alone. From the time we're children, we're taught that being alone is something to be avoided. We're told to make friends, to fit in, to be part of the group. And there's nothing wrong with connection. Connection is beautiful. But somewhere along the way, we confuse connection with dependency. We confuse community with conformity. We started believing that if we're not constantly surrounded by people, if we're not always part of something, then something must be wrong with us. And that belief, that fundamental misunderstanding, causes so much unnecessary suffering. Let me tell you something that might shake you up a bit. You came into this world alone, and you're going to leave it alone. That's not a sad statement. That's not meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up to the reality that your life, your experience, your consciousness is ultimately yours and yours alone. Nobody else can live your life for you. Nobody else can think your thoughts. Nobody else can feel your feelings. You are the sole inhabitant of your inner world, and the sooner you become comfortable with that truth, the sooner you can start living authentically. When you walk alone, you're not rejecting other people. You're not saying that relationships don't matter or that love isn't important. You're simply recognizing that before you can truly connect with others, you have to connect with yourself. You have to know who you are when nobody's watching. You have to understand what you believe when there's no one around to impress. You have to be comfortable in your own skin, in your own silence, in your own company. Because if you can't be alone with yourself, if you need constant external validation and constant external stimulation, then you're not really living, you're reacting, you're performing, you're playing a role. The truth is that most people are terrified of silence, they're terrified of stillness. They fill every moment with noise, with activity, with other people's voices, because when things get quiet, they have to face themselves. And facing yourself can be uncomfortable, it can be challenging. All your fears, all your doubts, all your insecurities rise to the surface when there's nothing to distract you from them. But here's the beautiful part. Once you're willing to face those things, once you're willing to sit with your discomfort instead of running from it, something magical happens. You start to see that most of what you were afraid of isn't real. Most of what you thought you needed isn't necessary. Most of what you believed about yourself isn't true. Walking alone means you're willing to question everything. You're willing to examine the beliefs you've been carrying around since childhood and ask yourself, is this really mine or did I inherit it? Did I choose this or was it chosen for me? Does this serve me or am I serving it? And when you start asking these questions, when you start peeling back the layers of conditioning and programming, you begin to find your authentic self underneath all of that. You begin to realize that you're not who your parents told you to be. You're not who your teachers told you to be. You're not who society told you to be. You're something entirely different, something entirely unique, something that can only be expressed when you give yourself permission to be different. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but I don't want to be alone. I want friends, I want community, I want love, and I'm telling you, you can have all of those things. But you have to start with yourself first. You have to be willing to be your own best friend before you can be a good friend to anyone else. You have to be willing to enjoy your own company before you can fully appreciate someone else's company. Because if you're coming to relationships from a place of neediness, from a place of incompleteness, from a place of desperation, you're not really connecting with other people, you're using them. You're using them to fill a void that only you can fill. The man who walks alone has filled that void. He's done the inner work. He's faced his demons. He's made peace with his past. He's accepted himself completely, flaws and all. And because he's done that work, when he does connect with others, those connections are real. They're authentic. They're based on genuine appreciation rather than desperate need. He doesn't need people to complete him because he's already complete. He doesn't need people to validate him because he validates himself. He doesn't need people to tell him who he is because he already knows who he is. This is the paradox that so few people understand. When you're complete within yourself, when you're comfortable being alone, you actually become more attractive to others. People are drawn to those who are self-sufficient, who are confident, who are secure in themselves. Nobody wants to be around someone who's clingy and needy and desperate for approval. But everyone wants to be around someone who's comfortable in their own skin, who knows their own worth, who doesn't need anything from you except genuine connection. So how do you become that person? How do you become comfortable walking alone? It starts with making a decision. You decide that your peace of mind matters more than fitting in. You decide that your authenticity matters more than being liked. You decide that your growth matters more than staying comfortable. And once you make that decision, once you really commit to it, your life begins to change. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, consistently, profoundly. You start spending time alone intentionally, not because you have to, but because you choose to. You take yourself on walks, you sit in silence, you meditate, you journal, you think, you reflect. You get curious about your own mind, your own thoughts, your own patterns. And as you do this, as you develop a relationship with yourself, something interesting happens. You start to notice all the ways you've been betraying yourself to please other people. You start to see all the times you said yes when you meant no. You start to recognize all the places where you dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel threatened by your brightness. And once you see these patterns, once you become aware of them, you can't unsee them. You can't go back to unconsciously living according to other people's expectations. You start making different choices. You start setting boundaries. You start saying no without guilt. You start honoring your own needs and your own values even when other people don't understand or approve. And yes, this creates distance. Some people won't like the new you. Some people will try to pull you back into your old patterns because your growth makes them uncomfortable. But that's okay. That's part of the process. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You're here to live your truth. The man who walks alone understands something that most people never learn. You can't control what other people think about you, and you shouldn't try. Other people's opinions of you are none of your business. They're going to think whatever they think based on their own experiences, their own beliefs, their own limitations. And if you spend your life trying to manage other people's perceptions, trying to be what they want you to be, you'll lose yourself completely. You'll become a hollow shell, a people pleaser with no core, no center, no authentic self. But when you walk alone, when you're willing to be misunderstood, when you're willing to be judged, when you're willing to be criticized, you reclaim your power. You stop giving other people control over your happiness. You stop waiting for permission to be yourself. You stop looking outside yourself for validation that can only come from within. And in that moment, you become free. Not free from responsibility, not free from challenges, but free from the tyranny of other people's expectations. Free to be exactly who you are, exactly as you are, without apology and without explanation. This freedom is what everyone is searching for, but most people are looking in all the wrong places. They think freedom comes from having enough money, or enough success, or enough recognition. They think freedom comes from finding the perfect relationship or the perfect job or the perfect life situation. But none of those external things can give you freedom. Real freedom, lasting freedom, comes from within. It comes from knowing yourself so completely, accepting yourself so fully that nothing external can shake you. It comes from being so grounded in your own truth that other people's storms can't knock you over. Walking alone teaches you this. Every day you spend in your own company, every hour you spend in silence, every moment you spend listening to your inner voice instead of the outer noise, you're building this unshakable foundation. You're developing what some people call presence, what others call consciousness, what I call being awake. You're no longer sleepwalking through life, following the herd, doing what you're supposed to do. You're awake, you're alert, you're conscious of who you are and why you're here and what you're meant to do. And when you're awake, when you're conscious, you start to see that most people are asleep. They're living on autopilot, repeating the same patterns day after day, year after year, never questioning, never examining, never growing. They're comfortable in their routines, safe in their conformity, protected by their normalcy, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're not bad people, they're just asleep. And you can't wake someone who doesn't want to wake up. You can't force consciousness on someone who's comfortable with their unconsciousness. This is why the man who walks alone often walks alone. Not because he's superior, not because he's better than anyone else, but because he's operating at a different frequency. He's asking different questions. He's seeking different things. He's not interested in small talk and surface level interactions. He's interested in truth. He's interested in meaning. He's interested in growth. And most people aren't ready for that level of intensity, that level of authenticity, that level of depth. But here's what I want you to understand. Your willingness to walk alone, your commitment to your own growth, your dedication to your own truth, this is a gift to the world. Because every person who wakes up, every person who becomes conscious, every person who lives authentically raises the collective consciousness. You're not just changing your own life. You're changing the world. You're showing other people that there's another way to live. You're demonstrating through your example that it's possible to be happy without constantly seeking approval. That it's possible to be fulfilled without constantly chasing external validation. That it's possible to be at peace while walking your own path. And yes, walking alone can be challenging. There will be moments when you doubt yourself. There will be times when you feel isolated. There will be days when you wonder if it would be easier to just go back to conformity, to just be like everyone else, to just do what's expected. But in those moments, I want you to remember why you chose this path. I want you to remember that every great teacher, every true leader, every authentic soul throughout history walked alone first. They separated themselves from the crowd. They questioned the status quo. They challenged the conventional wisdom, and yes, they were often criticized, they were often rejected, they were often misunderstood. But they stayed true to themselves anyway, and because they did, they changed the world. You have that same potential within you. You have that same capacity for transformation. You have that same ability to live authentically and impact others through your example. But you have to be willing to walk alone first. You have to be willing to separate yourself from the herd mentality. You have to be willing to think your own thoughts, feel your own feelings, make your own choices, even when those choices don't make sense to anyone else. Let me share something with you about the nature of fear. Most people avoid walking alone because they're afraid. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of being different. They're afraid of being wrong. But here's the truth about fear. It's almost always a liar. Fear tells you that terrible things will happen if you step outside your comfort zone. Fear tells you that you'll be alone forever if you stop pleasing everyone. Fear tells you that you'll fail if you try something different. But when you actually face your fears, when you actually walk through them, instead of letting them stop you, you realize they were just illusions. You realize you're stronger than you thought. You realize you're more capable than you believed. You realize that what you were running from wasn't actually dangerous at all. The man who walks alone has faced his fears. He's walked through the fire of his own doubt and uncertainty. He's confronted the parts of himself he was ashamed of. He's looked at his shadow side, his weak side, his broken side. And instead of turning away, instead of pretending those parts don't exist, he's integrated them. He's accepted them. He's made peace with them because he understands that wholeness doesn't mean perfection. Wholeness means accepting all of yourself, the light and the dark, the strong and the weak, the beautiful and the ugly. This self-acceptance is revolutionary. We live in a world that's constantly telling us we're not enough. We're not smart enough, successful enough, attractive enough, wealthy enough, popular enough. We're bombarded with messages that we need to be more, do more, have more. And these messages create a constant state of dissatisfaction, a constant feeling of inadequacy, a constant need to prove ourselves. But when you accept yourself completely, when you recognize that you're enough exactly as you are, those messages lose their power. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop performing. You just are. And there's such peace in that. There's such freedom in that. When you're not constantly trying to be someone you're not, when you're not constantly trying to impress people or meet expectations or live up to some impossible standard, you have so much more energy, you have so much more clarity, you have so much more capacity for joy. Because you're not wasting your life trying to be someone else's version of who you should be. You're just being yourself. And being yourself, your authentic self, is the most liberating thing you can do. Now, let me be clear about something. Walking alone doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent or disconnected from humanity. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself completely. What it means is that your primary relationship is with yourself, and all other relationships flow from that center. You're not dependent on others for your happiness. You're not looking to others to complete you. You're already complete, and you're choosing to share that completeness with others. This is the difference between needy love and genuine love. Needy love says, I need you to make me happy. I need you to validate me. I need you to give my life meaning. That's not love, that's dependency. Genuine love says, I'm already happy, and I choose to share my happiness with you. I'm already whole, and I choose to connect with your wholeness. I already have meaning in my life, and I choose to create more meaning together. That's real love. That's authentic connection. And it can only come from a place of completeness, not incompleteness. The man who walks alone has learned this lesson. He's learned that trying to get from others what you should be giving yourself is a recipe for disappointment and resentment. He's learned that no person, no relationship, no external circumstance can make you happy if you're not happy with yourself first. He's learned that all the love in the world can't fill the void of self-rejection, so he's done the work. He's filled his own void. He's become his own source of love, validation, and approval. And because he has, he's no longer desperate. He's no longer needy. He's no longer looking outside himself for what can only be found within. This self-sufficiency is attractive, it's magnetic. When you're complete within yourself, when you're not looking to take from others, people naturally want to be around you. Not because you need them, but because you appreciate them. Not because they complete you, but because they complement you. And these kinds of relationships built on mutual wholeness rather than mutual neediness, are the only relationships worth having. They're the only relationships that last. They're the only relationships that truly nourish both people involved. So if you're someone who walks alone, if you're someone who doesn't fit in, if you're someone who feels different from everyone around you, I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken, you're not defective, you're not antisocial, you're awake, you're conscious. You're on a path that requires solitude because transformation can't happen in a crowd. You can't hear your inner voice when you're constantly surrounded by outer voices. You can't find your truth when you're constantly being told what to believe. You can't become yourself when you're constantly trying to be like everyone else. Your willingness to walk alone is your strength, not your weakness. Your comfort with solitude is your power, not your problem. Your ability to be with yourself is your greatest gift, not your greatest flaw. And I want you to honor that. I want you to respect that. I want you to protect that. Because the world needs people like you. The world needs people who are willing to question. The world needs people who are willing to be different. The world needs people who are willing to stand alone when everyone else is sitting down in conformity. Every great movement in history started with someone who was willing to walk alone. Every major breakthrough in human consciousness came from someone who was willing to separate themselves from the collective thinking. Every innovation, every invention, every work of art that's ever mattered came from someone who was willing to be different. And you have that same capacity, you have that same potential, you have that same responsibility. Because once you wake up, once you become conscious, once you see through the illusions that most people are still believing, you can't go back to sleep. You can't pretend you don't know what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. And that means you have a choice to make. You can either honor your truth and walk your own path, even if it means walking alone, or you can deny your truth and go back to the crowd, even though you know the crowd is walking in the wrong direction. I'm here to tell you that the first choice, the choice to honor your truth, is the only choice that leads to peace. It's the only choice that leads to fulfillment. It's the only choice that leads to a life worth living. Yes, it requires courage. Yes, it requires strength. Yes, it requires a willingness to be misunderstood and judged and criticized. But all of that is temporary. The pain of living a lie, the pain of betraying yourself, the pain of being someone you're not, that's permanent. That's a life sentence of quiet desperation. So walk alone if you must. Walk confidently. Walk proudly. Walk consciously. Know that every step you take on your own path is a step toward your highest self. Know that every moment you spend in your own company is a moment of growth and transformation. Know that every time you choose your truth over popularity, you're strengthening your connection to your authentic self. And here's what will happen. As you continue walking this path, you'll start to attract other people who walk alone. You'll start to connect with souls who understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. You'll start to build a community of conscious individuals who respect each other's solitude while also appreciating each other's company. These will be your people, your tribe, your family of choice. And these connections, rare as they may be, will be worth more than 1,000 superficial friendships. Because when you connect with someone from a place of wholeness, when you connect with someone who's also done the inner work, who's also comfortable walking alone, who's also committed to truth and growth and authenticity, that connection is powerful. It's real. It's nourishing. It's the kind of connection that doesn't drain you or deplete you. It's the kind of connection that energizes you and inspires you and reminds you why human connection is so beautiful. But those connections can only happen after you've walked alone, after you've done the work, after you've become comfortable in your own skin, after you've found your own truth. You can't skip that step. You can't bypass that process. You have to be willing to be alone before you can truly be with others. You have to be willing to lose the crowd before you can find your tribe. And I promise you, from the bottom of my heart, from the depth of my experience, from the clarity of my knowing, it's worth it. Every lonely night, every misunderstood moment, every time you felt different and isolated and alone, it's all worth it. Because on the other side of that solitude is freedom. On the other side of that loneliness is authenticity. On the other side of that separation is self-realization. The man who walks alone isn't running from the world, he's running toward himself. He's not rejecting others, he's accepting himself. He's not being antisocial, he's being authentic. And in a world full of people trying to be like everyone else, there's nothing more radical, nothing more revolutionary, nothing more powerful than being yourself. So if you're walking alone right now, keep walking. Don't turn back. Don't give up. Don't let the temporary discomfort of solitude convince you to return to the permanent dissatisfaction of conformity. You're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. You're becoming who you're meant to be. And if you're not walking alone yet, if you're still in the crowd but feeling the call to separate, to find your own way, to honor your own truth, I encourage you to take that first step. Start spending time alone intentionally. Start getting curious about who you are when nobody's watching. Start listening to your inner voice instead of all the outer voices. Start questioning the beliefs you've been carrying around without examination. Start choosing your peace over other people's approval. It won't be easy at first. Your ego will resist. Your conditioning will fight back. Your fear will try to stop you. But keep going anyway. Keep walking, keep growing, keep evolving. Because the life that's waiting for you on the other side of this transformation is beyond anything you can currently comprehend. It's a life of freedom, authenticity, peace, and purpose. It's a life where you're no longer controlled by other people's opinions or expectations. It's a life where you're guided by your own inner wisdom, your own inner knowing, your own inner truth. This is the life of the man who walks alone. And it's available to anyone who's willing to take the journey, anyone who's willing to face themselves, anyone who's willing to be different, anyone who's willing to trust that the path less traveled is often the path that leads home. So walk. Walk with confidence. Walk with courage. Walk with consciousness. And know that every step you take alone is bringing you closer to everything you've ever truly wanted. Not the things you thought you wanted because society told you to want them, but the things your soul truly desires: peace, freedom, authenticity, and the joy of being exactly who you are. That's the gift of walking alone. That's the power of solitude. That's the transformation that comes from being willing to separate yourself from the crowd and find your own way. And once you experience it, once you taste that freedom, once you feel that peace, you'll never want to go back to the old way of living. You'll never want to return to the prison of other people's expectations. You'll never want to give up your authenticity for the illusion of belonging, because you'll realize that true belonging doesn't come from fitting in with others. True belonging comes from being at home with yourself. And the man who walks alone has found his way home. He's found his center. He's found his truth. And in finding himself, he's found everything he was looking for all along. This is your invitation. This is your call. This is your opportunity to choose a different path, to live a different life, to be a different kind of person. A person who's not afraid to stand alone. A person who's not afraid to be different. A person who's not afraid to honor their truth no matter what anyone else thinks. The world is waiting for you to step into your power. The world is waiting for you to live your truth. The world is waiting for you to walk your own path. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the right time. Stop waiting for someone else to validate your choice. Start walking. Start now. Start alone. And trust that everything you need is already within you, waiting to be accessed, waiting to be expressed, waiting to be lived. You are enough. You are complete, you are whole, and you don't need anyone else to tell you that for it to be true. You just need to believe it yourself. You just need to live it yourself. You just need to walk it yourself. One step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. The path is calling you. Your truth is calling you. Your authentic self is calling you. Will you answer? Will you walk? Will you step into the solitude that leads to freedom? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. And now is the time to make it.